some of you may be saying, why didn't you do Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1? Because about half of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 is Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1. Greetings, loyal listeners and new recruits. I'm Drew Deach.
I'm Travis Newton.
And this is GenreVision. GenreVision is a weekly movie club where we discuss horror films, action movies, fantasy flicks, sci-fi cinema, and more. And we are concluding our holiday, winter, Wonderland celebration month, and the last episode of GenreVision in 2021 with Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Just to clarify, we are taking a week off next week. We always do a holiday break week. We will be back in the next week, starting January. We'll have a schedule up on GenreVision soon. Our pre-show is about that. But yes, we're going to close out this holiday celebration extravaganza in December with Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2.
This movie has a really unique story of its production because about nearly half of its running time is footage from the first movie. And we've never done that before. And I would hazard a guess to say that this is like truly unique. You'd be really hard pressed to find a sequel that is at least half archival footage from the first movie. This is a big deal. Like, this is weird.
There are definitely older movies that have a lot of reused footage because back in the day, before video, it was like if you saw a sequel, you had no way of knowing what happened in the original unless you had seen the original and retained the information from it.
Sure.
So there's some precedent to having a lot of recap footage in even big studio sequels. But before we get into the movie proper, I do think it is worth talking about the production of this because to very quickly summarize about the first movie, Silent Night, Deadly Night was a enormously controversial movie. They got banned in many places, in many cities in America, mostly for the marketing. But the actual movie has stuff that was certainly controversial at the time. And it was, I believe, what was the movie it opened against? I can't remember. It opened up against something that was really, that ended up being very successful. And it was beating it, but after 2 weeks, it got pulled. And so it was actually doing really good money, but then it got pulled and they lost essentially their investment until a couple years later, when it hit video, and it did extremely well on video.
The movie you're talking about that it was actually outgrossing was Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nightmare on Elm Street. Yes, that's it. Yep. They came out on the same weekend and it was outgrossing Nightmare on Elm Street. So one of the producers was like, well, we need to get a return on this investment because it's doing so well on video, and went to one of the editors. And I think if I remember correctly, I believe this producer is Jose Menendez, the father of the Menendez brothers. If you know those infamous murderers who killed.
Let me take a look at that. So
Jose Menendez. Well, he was the producer at Live Entertainment, which was the distributor.
Oh,
so he may not be
like, yeah. He's not actually credited as a producer for the film because the only producer for this film credited is Lawrence Applebaum.
Yeah, and Lawrence Applebaum came from the original movie, I believe, and he's the one that I believe was pushing for them to do what we're going to talk about. But Jose Menendez was, I think, the guy that ran Live Entertainment, who was the distributor after it went to video. So they wanted a sequel because this was doing really well on video, but they approached the sequel not as actually filming a sequel. What they wanted to do was originally just recut the first movie and move it around and release it as a sequel, which is insane. Like already.
Yeah, it's such an incredibly insane, cynical move to be like, oh, audiences don't give a shit. Like, we can do this, we can do whatever we want, and audiences will eat it up. And for them to believe that was, I mean, it's such an audacious thought. But what they actually did, I don't know. I can't even really call it a full movie on its own because structurally it's so weird.
Well, right. I mean, it's designed to be half of a recap of one movie. And then, well, okay, so let me continue exactly what happened is that they approached the two of their editors, who had, I believe it's Lee
Harry,
and then the other one was, he's one of the screenwriters. His name's
Joseph Earl.
Joseph Earl. So these were both editors working at Live Entertainment, and they were approached and told to re-edit this into a sequel, and they were like, "That's unheard of," and no, and so they were like, "Well, let us write some new material that we can shoot and then put into the movie to, you know, make it seem a little bit more fresh." So they ended up writing a sequel, and it ended up kind of getting away from them, where they were like, "Well, we've written too much. It's kind of more of a movie now." And so they were like, "Well, look, we've got this script." They wrote it, I believe, in a weekend, and came back and were like, "Here, this is the new stuff that we would shoot." And they were given 10 days to go out and shoot new footage to integrate into the reordered footage. It's not real. It's a very, very cut down, summarized version of the first movie, interspersed with primarily an interview scene. And the interview is between this psychiatrist, Dr. Bloom, and Ricky. Ricky, played by Eric Freeman, is the younger brother of Billy, who was the killer Santa Claus in the first movie. And so Ricky is reminiscing about the first movie, remembering things from when he was a baby, and remembering things that only Billy was present for, but recapping the movie with some voiceover in these intercut interview scenes. So much of the movie, if you've seen Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1, you're just seeing a much more hacked down version, including they hacked down a lot of the violence from the first cut, the first film.
Now, you would think, like, just hearing this kind of story about what they did, you know, after the first movie was pulled from theaters due to controversy in 1984, in November of 1984, you'd think, well, did they turn us around like really quickly? Was it like released the next year, or, you know, even just a few scant months later? And no, it was actually released in April of 1987. April. A Christmas movie in April. Very strange.
There's a couple things to that. Is because they only came to the sequel when it was doing really well on video, and it got released on video in 86.
Okay.
And so because what happened was they pulled the movie. They actually tried to put it back into theaters, I believe in 85, but they completely removed all Christmas stuff from the marketing. I've seen the poster for it where it's like just this weird kind of like Saul Bass, like eyeball, like somebody's eyes and stuff. It's still called Silent Night, Deadly Night. But they tried to strip away the Christmas stuff because that was such a huge part of the controversy. Was the image of the Santa with an axe going down a chimney,
which is a great poster. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic! I mean, I remember that VHS because it was a big VHS from my childhood, and it's like, oh, that's a striking image. So by the time it hit video in 86 and did super well for them, that's when they were like, hey, let's try and make a sequel and capitalize on this. So they grabbed these two guys and they were not directors. They were not writers. They were editors. And what's interesting is the actual director credit in the movie to Lee Harry is director/editor Lee Harry, which I've never seen before.
He's also given a story by credit.
He's given a story by there's a number of people who get story credits.
There's four people get story by credits. I mean, this for me, at least on GenreVision, is unprecedented. Like, we've never done a movie with credits this strange that has a production story this strange. I mean, this is just so odd.
It's extremely odd.
This factors into a lot of our critical assessment of the film because it doesn't ever feel like its own movie, ever. And that's not an inherently negative thing.
After a point, it does.
Yeah, I would agree with that because, like, after a certain point, there's no archival footage used, but that's halfway through the movie.
It is.
And so after that point, it's like, well, like, what do we have to look at that, you know, builds on the previous film or I guess I should say, and or stands alone as its own sufficient, you know, feature length feature. And that's not there. It's you know, it's not there. It's just a totally unique feature experience.
Well, here's a key thing. It should be said, I have seen Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1. Travis has not. So part of the thing was I was like, don't worry, you don't need to watch it. You're going to see a big chunk of it in this movie. And unfortunately, I think it's an unfair assessment of the first movie. You get a lot of the big main beats and everything, but you're watching a recap. And so it's already kind of a weird experience for somebody who hasn't seen the first movie. And then it's doubly weird because our lead character in this, Ricky, as I said before, played by one Mr. Eric Freeman, is the reason to see the movie.
Eric Freeman, folks, is the reason for the season. So in the first scene of this new film, you get Eric Freeman, and he's, imprisoned in some sort of, could be a mental institution, could be a prison. He's incarcerated, basically, for doing something, and you don't know quite what. But he is smoking very dramatically smoking, and he's doing a lot of staring. And there's this black guy, who's come in and is staring just as dramatically and just as bug-eyed. And you're thinking, what's going on? There's some kind of dynamic between these two men. What's going on here? And the orderly is staring so fervently and so dramatically. And you're thinking, what's going on with this guy? Like, he's got these big, like, Coke bug eyes. And then there's this psychiatrist that comes in and starts recording on this big reel-to-reel tape machine. And you're thinking, okay, this scene has gone on for 4 minutes now. What is going on?
Well, the credits go on for a long time.
Forever. And already this kind of set the expectation for me that's like, okay, they did shoot some new footage, but they're going to make these scenes last as long as they fucking can.
Well, to be fair, that's the end credits are the same way. They lengthened that out because they had a lot of time to fill with the eventual footage that they used from the first one. So the majority of the first half of the movie is Ricky recounting the events of the first film as if they happened to him. Like, he says that it's Billy this, Billy that, but the perspective and everything is all like, this is essentially him, like, in a way. But so the only real new footage we have is this interview scene. Now, granted, there is some great stuff in here because Eric Freeman, I think it's tough to talk about this movie without really getting out in front of what this movie's known for. And more than the movie itself, this movie was known for a meme, kind of before meme had entered the lexicon in my memory. I don't remember things being called memes back then. And the infamous meme that was a clip from this is what everybody knows as Garbage Day. And that was kind of the only point of reference I think a lot of people had. They probably didn't even know it was from this movie, but it was an indication of an actor who was doing something that is extremely rare. It's a totally 100% committed performance to something that is absolutely wackadoo. Freeman, as an actor in this, is doing things that you will not see any other actors do.
Eric Freeman's performance is what defines Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, because all of the footage that works or that is like worth watching from this new version of the movie, it has to be on his shoulders. Like, it has to feature him because he's the driving force behind it all. It's such a monumental performance in bad, like, cheesy cinema, I guess. And I hate distilling it down to those terms, but it's become known for this. Like, if you watch his performance, you'll think, my God, what happened to this guy? Evidently, like, when they tried to record a DVD commentary for this movie, they couldn't even find him.
They did eventually. Yeah. Well, it was in the mid 2000s when this meme was taking off, and there was a documentary called Finding Freeman that these guys were trying, because they assumed that, like, oh, he went into hiding and is so ashamed of the movie that he doesn't want to be known with it. But they found him, and he was a pretty, like, normal guy who was saying, like, yeah, I was really trying to make it as an actor, and it was, it was my first real role that I got. And he kind of fell into a shit situation because the two men, the two editors, Lee Harry and Joseph Earl, they weren't directors. They didn't know how to direct actors. And because Lee Harry was so concerned with just getting the movie made because he'd never made a movie before. It ended up that Joe Earl was doing a lot of talking to the actors. And so Freeman was getting some conflicting messages from his directors, and Joe Earl's direction was always bigger and louder because Freeman from his own, he's saying like, oh, when they gave me that direction, I thought it was literally, they can't hear me on the track. Like, so I have to be louder. Like I have to be bigger.
That's fucking insane.
So first of all, I don't fault his performance at all because his performance makes the movie.
Absolutely. There's no question that his performance is really the reason to see the movie. The other reason to see the movie, or at least the new footage that they shot for this movie, is that it's shot so poorly that it ends up being kind of funny. Like if you've ever seen Garth Marenghi's Dark Place, like they intentionally botched the framing of the close-ups in that show. And you look at the close-ups that they shot specifically for this movie and you think, my God, the framing is terrible. Like the headroom, there's too much headroom. Like they're not putting the actual like facial features, the eyes and the nose and the mouth of the actors in the correct place in the frame. And so much of it shot in tight close-up, particularly this kind of like wraparound stuff with Freeman and the psychologist or the psychiatrist character. Like it's all botched so heavily. And then you look at the cinematographer credit and it's this guy named Harvey Jenkins or Harvey Jenkins with a G. And he was the cinematographer on the Garbage Pail Kids movies. So
oh God.
Go. And also Thunder Run and something called Omega Syndrome.
Yeah. So there's a big part of me that gives this movie probably a bigger benefit of the doubt than it deserves, but it's because I know these things. Cause it's like, these people were not equipped to make a movie. None of them, like essentially.
No.
But they were doing the best with the little bit of time. Like every scene that you see in this movie, that was one day. They had one day at every location, essentially, to shoot this stuff. So it's fast and it's quick, and it's coming from people who have never made a movie before and really had no strong desire to make a movie. They were editors. But Eric Freeman is able to absolutely bring these scenes to life. Now, granted, again, a majority of it is him in this one room with this, the actor who played Dr. Bloom, funny enough, I found out, had just gotten off of, he was a big theater actor and he had just played a psychiatrist. He played the psychiatrist in Equus.
No shit. Wow.
Yes. So it's like he seemed way overqualified for this role.
And yet he still kind of botches his on-screen time.
Oh yeah. Well, but I blame the director, but at the same point, I don't blame the director because it's like, you shouldn't have been doing this. Like it wasn't your fault.
Blame is such a strange idea when it comes to movies like this, because ultimately, like, who does it fall on? Like, whose shoulders does it fall on to be like, okay, this is some sort of like cheaply thrown together product. You know, it's some executive, it's some business person who said like, this is the right thing to do to make money.
Yeah. It's Jose Menendez or, Lawrence Applebaum, like somebody who signed on the dotted line to be like, make this. And who do it like, and then they just opened the door in the back office was like, hey kids, you're making a movie.
Yeah. We're not going to give you enough money to do 10 days of production, but yet you have 10 days to make this, basically to make this movie, this half movie. And then we're going to take the other half of the running time from the prior movie in the franchise. And that's just what it's going to be. Do you have the resources to track down the original actors? Absolutely not. So you're going to recast roles as you see fit. It's such a bizarre approach to filmmaking that regardless of any critical assessment, like good or bad, of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2, which is a fucking tongue twister of a title.
Well, especially when you had two whiskeys.
That's true. It immediately merits recommendation because if you're interested at all about the business of filmmaking or the process of film production, this is a curiosity that immediately merits recommendation.
It's a learning tool in that regard. Absolutely. And I think this is when we talk about, you learn more about filmmaking from bad movies than you do good ones. And this is a great example of that. But I don't want to sound down on this movie because this movie brings me incredible joy because Eric Freeman is delivering lines like no one has ever delivered lines on screen.
His eyebrows are such a huge part of that.
Somebody has counted how many times his eyebrows go up and down.
Yeah, it was some like 130 times in the movie that his eyebrows go boink, boink, boink up and down. And it's almost like every syllable of every line he delivers, his eyebrows are just boingy, boingy, boingy up and down. It is so nuts. It's a huge choice that immediately defines his performance as like something you'll never see again.
But it's not just that. I mean, in the long run, the confusion from having two directors who didn't know what they were doing and giving conflicting direction to their actors ended up crafting a performance from Freeman, and pretty much solely Freeman in the movie, that is otherworldly. Like, it really is like nothing else. And so there's so many moments of unintentional humor because of Freeman's delivery. Like, he, you know, the doctor asks him at one point something about like, do you have dreams, Ricky? And he responds just, I don't sleep.
Oh, he'll turn a little soupçon of a line into a fucking meal.
Okay. I mean, there's so many lines from this that, you know, Garbage Day is the thing that's known, but I'm telling you, that's the tip of the iceberg in terms of the great Eric Freeman deliveries in this movie. Like,
yeah.
Because eventually what happens is, once we've gotten rid of the Silent Night, Deadly Night footage, then we get into, well, why is Ricky here in this institution? Something happened with him. So when he was a kid and after the events of the first movie took place, he gets shipped off from the Catholic orphanage to live with the Rosenbergs, because the Catholic orphanage feels like, well, he's traumatized by all the Santa stuff, so he won't experience Santa if he goes and lives with a Jewish family.
Yeah. So just to tell our listeners what kind of Santa trauma he lived through at the orphanage, there was a day, one Christmas, where he saw two Santa Clauses shot to death before his very eyes. So
one of them being his older brother.
Yes, one of them was his older brother, which I'm not sure how. Yeah, I guess. Yeah, he knew at the time.
Oh yeah,
but like also there's this whole origin story of like the first movie kind of glossing over it, and then getting into the second half of that origin story where like, oh, Ricky and Billy were driving down the road with their parents one dark Christmas night when they were stopped by a man on the road in his Santa costume with a handgun, and he shot the dad. And then there's this whole, you know, sequence that gets laid out before you as Billy's origin story. And Ricky is an infant at the time. And they ask him like, how do you remember all this, Ricky? You were an infant. And he goes, I was there.
Yeah, no. First of all, he does say I was there, but he goes, I was there. Like, right, in that just perfect Eric Freeman way. So yeah, I mean, we can't sit here and recap the entirety of the first movie. The part two did that for us. So
exactly. Yeah. So there's really no reason in doing it. Yeah.
So the point being that after seeing two Santas gunned down in front of him, one being his brother, he went and lived with this Jewish couple. And now it's not so much Santa stuff that triggers Ricky. His big thing is he has a fear of nuns because the Mother Superior in the first movie was a very driving force of instilling the trauma and psychosis into Billy, and that seemed to transfer over to Ricky.
Right. But she made Billy believe that punishment was good and that naughty people had to be punished.
Yeah, that's the big theme of the first movie, is about Catholic guilt being, you know, a really bad thing. But Ricky's triggers are nuns and the color red, which he associates with Santa because he associates it with seeing his brother and another Santa gunned down in front of him. So, because there's a great insert shot of the back of a Santa suit getting shot up with squibs that Ricky flashes to, and then we just cut to Eric Freeman's wonderful, wonderful face, you know, doing reaction shots. So he has a trigger where if he sees red, he kind of freaks out. And we then fast forward to Ricky when we're told he's 15.
Or is it 17? Because like we're introduced to like Ricky at like 12 years old, and then there's
he's
like
15.
5 years later, my dad died, and then we cut to this new guy.
No. In the credits, it says Ricky at 15. So,
oh, Jesus.
And they get this actor who looks nothing like Eric Freeman. Like, absolutely nothing like him.
Oh, yeah, there's this weird thing going on with his hair where, like, the front of his hair has this, like, weird blonde patch in it. And it's like, who the fuck is this?
And funny enough, the actor who's playing Ricky at 15 was, I believe, 3 or 4 years older than Eric Freeman at the time.
Yeah. I told you when we were watching it, I'm like, I think this guy has a mortgage. Like this guy at like 15 or 17 years old, however old it is, it looks like he's got a mortgage. Like what's going on here? And then you did your research and found out he was actually older than Eric Freeman.
Yes, he was 24 and Eric Freeman was 21 at the time of filming. So we have this flashback where Ricky's at his dad's, his adopted dad's grave, and he wanders off into the forest because he likes being alone. He has some line about like, you get kind of weird when everyone around you gets dead. And then
like you do.
He comes across a couple having one of those just low budget horror movie blanket like make out sessions that are in so many of these bad movies. And the guy gets handsy and starts pretty one-to-one recreating the Santa attack that baby Ricky somehow remembers from the first movie.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's like blocked exactly the same way so they can intercut back and forth with that footage. And also big thing is that the guy who's attacking this woman is driving a red Jeep. So Ricky, of course, goes off. He manages to magically teleport inside the Jeep in one shot, which is wonderful. And then he runs this guy over. And after doing it, he goes up to the woman and she thanks him. She's just like, thank you. Like, thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
And then we cut back to the psychiatrist, and in giant text in his notebook, he's written "red car!" ! To which Ricky responds, "Red car. Good point."
This was very funny. What's also very funny is it looks for a moment, a long moment, like the psychiatrist is scribbling the words Red Carl.
Yes.
Well, I lost it at Red Carl. Well, who's Red Carl?
Well, the other thing that happens in that scene is he's doing his notes and he looks up and he doesn't see Ricky anywhere. And then Ricky appears next to him and goes, "Red car." So this is not the only... Ricky has incredible teleportation powers in this movie.
Yes, and obviously he does. He also has really good umbrella abilities, as we see when Ricky gets a job.
Yes, yeah. He's like, my mom couldn't afford to send me to college, so I got a job.
That's about 16 eyebrow pulses, by the way.
Yes.
So Ricky gets a job as like I don't know, he's working at some kind of restaurant somewhere.
He's a trash boy.
Yeah. When he's taking trash out to the dumpster one night, he sees a loan shark, like a mobster loan shark, beating up some guy in an alleyway behind the restaurant. And so he decides to, I don't know, give the loan shark some kind of like alleyway justice.
Well, there's a couple things. First of all, the actor playing the loan shark is great. Like,
yes.
He's relishing because he says something. He's like, "I hope you don't pay on Monday because I like hurting you too much." And
no, he treats every single moment as like this morsel, this like delicious morsel to be devoured. I'm like, that's what acting should be.
Yes, that's what acting in Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 should absolutely be.
Yeah, it's what makes the movie worth watching.
He beats up this guy, but that's not it. Ricky's not just some vigilante. The guy pulls out a red hanky.
Oh boy.
And when Ricky sees that, he goes up and he superhumanly like picks this dude up with one hand and sees that there's an umbrella in the trash. He impales the dude with the umbrella and, of course, like you must, opens up the umbrella after it's through the guy in a giant, blood spray. It's awesome. It's such
a fun kill. Yeah. That and of course, as soon as this man impaled with the umbrella is dropped on the ground and the sort of umbrella is opened and you see the sort of blood-soaked umbrella opened over this guy, it starts pouring rain.
Beautiful.
And we get this really, really long shot of the bloody umbrella getting soaked in the rain.
Poetry.
It is so fun.
So the next kind of incident in Ricky's life is that he suddenly is a motorcycle guy and bumps a woman bumps into him as he's trying to get out of a parking lot or something. And this moment is absolute love at first sight. Let me pull up the actress's name really quick because she does he runs this woman whose name is Jennifer, played by Elizabeth Kaitan. And they immediately are in love, and they have a very, very stereotypical, like, weak 80s sex scene. where they're
God,
just
I
like,
forgot how much time the movie wastes on this shit.
yeah, well, it's what you think of when you think of like very bare bones, unsexy 80s sex scenes where it's like they're just pressed up against each other. And then there's like, a long kind of tracking shot so that we can like when she's laying on top of him. And then, we see them afterwards and he's sitting up and she's sleeping. And he's like, it was my first time. I thought it was Jennifer's too.
I don't even think there's saxophone in this scene.
No,
that's how bare bone it is.
Yeah, I couldn't afford saxophone. The score is already, just like 3 piano notes. But so we see this and it's like, okay, now Ricky's in a relationship. So then we get to go to one of my favorite scenes, the movie theater scene, in which the movie theater is very clearly like some room at their like production distribution office.
Yeah, they've basically faked a movie theater. It's incredible.
They never show they never, when they do the reverse shot to show the screen, it's like, that's not in the same room. That's like
it almost looks like stock footage, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Well, because then it's revealed that the movie they're watching is a movie about a guy that dresses up in Santa and kills people. To which Ricky replies, "What?" And it's like, what? Okay, so wait, is in the actual movie they're reusing more footage from the first film that they didn't see in the recap. Which is the evil Santa that kills the parents doing a robbery at a gas station. And this whole time there's this guy in the back row being just an out and out jackass. Like he's like, boo, fuck you did it. And he says a bunch of words that we can't say here.
He's also the ex-boyfriend.
No. That's
Caton character. Jennifer?
No, that's a different character. That's Chip.
Chip.
The guy in the back row is just some asshole theater guy.
Yeah. And this is where Drew got his method.
I think I had it before this. It just is beautiful kismet that me and Ricky have the same movie theater etiquette, the move that we do.
So this guy is talking in the theater and Ricky will not stand for this. So Ricky turns around and gives this guy the fucking mean mug stare. And I'm like, that's every time Drew Deitch has told me about something like that has happened as far as like bad theater etiquette, like Drew does this same move.
That's what
I
do.
You're a psychopath.
Yes. I mean, unfortunately it does not work in this instance. So Ricky leaves Jennifer, and that's when Chip comes by, and Chip is her ex-boyfriend. And he's talking about like, hey, yeah, this girl that I'm with, she's just a fling. I've just been waiting for you. And he's like a cartoon of himself. But we get this background that's like, oh yeah, we did it. And I'm still, into you, and you're going to come back to me, babe. And then we cut back to the rude patron, and they are, they continue to track over to the guy sitting next to him. Cause he leans, he's like, watch this. They're going to go down in the basement without a flashlight, track over to a guy. Side note, that guy that looks very bored and uninterested is director Lee Harry.
I knew it had to be a crew member. I knew it had to be a fucking crew member. I'm like, that's not an actor.
Oh, of course. They can't hire. You have any idea like how much money they had to do this movie? They can't hire actors except in like key roles. So they do this actually well constructed gag where they keep going back to they go back to him one time, and then back to the rude patron, back to the guy as he says something. He's like, now he's going to do this. Back to him. Third time he comes back, that guy is just gone and Ricky is there. And he just goes, shh, naughty.
Oh, and it's so good. And when they cut back to Elizabeth Keitan, like looking back at him, and you just basically see this, like, I don't know, Looney Tunes dust cloud of like fists.
Yeah, there's just legs down, sticking up in the aisle and popcorn flying
so
up.
Funny.
It's great. Like it's legit good comedy. And
yeah,
I mean, I assume he kills that guy, but that's actually like they know they're doing something goofy here, like an umbrella kill. This moment in the movie theater, Ricky, of course, teleports back after Chip is left and is next to Jennifer. And she's like, hey, we should get out of here. And he's like, no, I'm starting to like this picture.
No, they knew it had to play as comedy.
Yeah. And it works. It 100% works. So then him and Jennifer are walking out and they run into Chip, who's fixing his red car. Good point. And and this is where the movie pops off.
So in the year 2021, this is odd to say, but like Ricky goes on like a mass shooting rampage in a suburban neighborhood. And this is not a Christmas movie because this, the main action does not happen at Christmas at all.
No, it's only the climax. This is apparently what was happening during Ricky. This is the reason Ricky's in the institution, is because he went on this rampage, which starts with him grabbing Chip. And the entire time he's grabbing Chip is just thankfully keeping his mouth totally wide open so that when they cut to the fake Chip head, it's perfectly, his mouth's wide open. And Ricky sticks the jumper cables in his mouth and turns them on, electrocutes him, and his eyeballs pop out in a wonderful explosion.
Sure, yeah. It's evidently the car battery was hooked up to his head and his eyeballs and glasses explode, which is a very fun gag.
There's a great reaction shot from Ricky where he's like, oh, okay.
Totally. And then we have the maraschino cherry scene on top of the sundae that is this film.
Jennifer is like, I hate you, Ricky. I can't believe what you did. I hate you. So then he gets up and looks at her and she goes, gulp. Uh-oh. and he rips off the antenna off the hood of the car and then strangles her with it.
Right. And then the cop comes up and it grabs the cop's gun and shoots the cop in the head, which is like, what?
What's great is if you go back and look at that, the cop's hat is like on crooked. And it's like, that's weird. I wonder why that is. Because
what the fuck is this, Mayberry?
Yeah, I was just going to say, this Barney Fife motherfucker comes right up to him and he's pointing the gun like inches away from his face and is like, don't think I don't know how to use this. And Ricky just grabs the gun and shoots him. And there's a great squib effect. And now Ricky is on the rampage.
Yeah, it should be noted. It should be noted as well that this cop who was wearing the hat, this sort of Mayberry ass motherfucker, beige cop uniform, right?
Yeah.
This will come back later.
That's what they could rent that day. And so Ricky's walking down and just like some guy walks out of his house, Ricky just shoots him. Boom. And the entire time Ricky is going, and then we get Garbage Day, one of the things I love about Garbage Day is that you saw it out of context the first time and it feels like, wow, that's a really bizarre, out of context, non sequitur, what the fuck thing to see. It's the same way in the movie.
Oh yeah. It doesn't play any different. It's amazing. It transcends. It's sort of like meme status where you're like, oh, this is like a gold moment. And
honestly, it's shot and like storyboarded well. They didn't do storyboards on this, but like the guy picking up the trash can to reveal Ricky in the background, like, and to pull focus to get Ricky, and then the close up of Garbage Day.
No, it's an indelible cinematic moment.
Yeah, it's perfect. It really is as good as promised out of context. And then it continues because he shoots the guy and, continue. Then we get a fake out because a little girl with a red ribbon in her hair bicycles up and bumps into him. And she's like, excuse me, mister. And he's like, that's okay. And she just walks off or tricycles off. And he continues. And
then there is one of the most insane car stunts you and I have ever seen.
Oh my God. Yes, there's a car. And granted, we've watched some of those, like the insane HK stunt movies. This might top them in a certain way. So
I told you this, like watching this stunt made my taint go cold.
Yes, it's honestly one of the scariest things I've ever seen put to film. Like, because this car is coming down the road and Ricky aims his gun and shoots the driver. And they do, I don't know the exact terminology of this, but it's essentially like a half ramp flip where the car is one half of it, the left half is going to go up on a ramp and then, spin and turn over. They have a stunt man standing in like to the side and in front of this ramp. And the car goes up over the ramp and this guy casually steps out of the way of this car. And I'm telling all of you, if you don't watch this movie, watch this stunt. Just search Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2 car, and you will get this stunt. It is jaw-dropping that man did not get severely injured or killed.
I mean, the way that it's shot makes it look like the car, as it went up over the ramp, was mere inches away from the stunt person's shoulder. the guy who was standing in the road playing Billy in that moment. It is harrowing.
It's stunning. It is absolutely one of the most stunning pieces of film I've ever seen. And then, of course, because this is a movie, the car immediately explodes.
Of course, yeah. I mean,
and it's a good explosion. Like, they really blew that car up.
They want us to have fun. I mean, God damn it.
Sure. But then Ricky is barricaded in the road by cops that strangely aren't wearing beige uniforms. Because
it's blue uniforms this time. I guess they must be from a different division or something. I don't know.
Yeah, man, maybe it's like, state and local police. I don't know. The real thing is that those were the uniforms they could rent that day.
Exactly.
Like, that's the real reason. Yeah. But Ricky is about to shoot himself in front of the cops, but he's out of bullets. And that's why, then we cut to him and he's got his finger gun up to his head. And that's the end of the story. Well, it turns out at some point he strangled Dr. Bloom with the tape. And is now sorry, Doc. And he escapes in an incredibly wonderfully low budget way, in which we have a close up on the tape reel still going, and we just hear voiceover like, "Oh my God, he's escaping!" Yeah.
It's you got 10 days. What do you do?
Yeah, I mean, so we pull back. What's great, I love in this scene, they have the nun who was like the nice nun at the Catholic orphanage that helped get Ricky, into his Jewish family, and some detective is talking to her, and in the back, the doctor's corpse is just there, like, and he's just open mouth, like, "Oh," and they're just sitting there, like, "Oh man, Ricky's escaped."
Yeah, and so you meet these new characters at like the midpoint of the movie, or even past the midpoint of the movie.
No, this is way past.
There's a new detective. There's a new nun.
Well, no, the nun was seen before. She's the nun that is with Ricky's foster parents when he freaks out, and they're like, he's got some problem. Do we, maybe we need to send him back? And she's like, "No, I know he can be okay if you, just love him and stuff like that." And she's a recast nun from the first movie that we see.
Got it. Okay.
She's the nice nun.
So she was a character that was in the first movie, but is now played by a new actress.
Correct.
Okay.
So my assumption is that the detective that we see from the first movie in very, very truncated footage is supposed to be this same detective that we see during this stretch. That's never established at all, so it could not be the case.
Also, it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter, because what happens is that they're like, well, Ricky's broken out. Where's he going to go? Well, his whole beef is with the Mother Superior. She's the one that, screwed up Billy, and Ricky's mad at her. So he's going to go and get revenge on her. There's a not bad scene in which it's another tracking shot where they had to do voiceover, because, they probably did 2 takes of this, and it's tracking over to a like Salvation Army collection Santa thing. You just hear voiceover like, "Hey, won't you give $1 for the kids?" and Ricky apparently kills this guy and takes his Santa costume. So we track over, and then he's in a phone booth, and he calls Mother Superior and is, "Merry Christmas."
As only he could say.
But then he steps out of the phone booth, and it's revealed there's the dead Santa guy pushed up against his face. Like, for what this movie had to do, it's not without attempts at filmmaking.
No. I mean, there are the occasional scenes in this that actually hint at this, like, oh, this could have been something more. Like, this could have actually been a real movie.
Yeah.
But the sort of like framing device of the whole first half of the narrative, where he's talking to the psychiatrist with the tape machine, it's like, this is so lazy. And the only thing that makes it feel like anyone is putting any effort forth is Eric Freeman's performance.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, structurally, if they wanted to do some kind of continuation, instead of this psychiatrist wraparound, they could have just started at the end of Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 1 and followed Ricky with him getting, assigned to a new family and all of his stuff. And it could have been a full movie, but they didn't want to spend the money to film a full movie, because also the first Silent Night, Deadly Night was a studio film. That's a TriStar movie.
Yep.
And it was made by their low budget department, but it was still, what I can't remember how much they spent on it, but it was still like, it was a studio movie with studio money and studio access. This was not. Like, this was a dinky, grungy little home video distribution outlet being like,
I hate to call things cash grabs in Hollywood because people use that as a cheap criticism against sequels. This was a cash grab because it's not even a full movie.
No, I mean, if you listen to the story, that's absolutely what it is. And within that, I think they stumbled upon the happy miracle of Eric Freeman. But so the ending of the movie is that he's going to go to the Mother Superior house. Mother Superior's been recast. They've also put like weird sickness lumps on her face.
Yeah, they gave her like a weird prosthetic on the left side of her face that kind of looks like boils and veins. Not sure why. They do establish that Mother Superior had like a stroke, but
I mean,
that's not what that looks like.
My bizarro assumption is like, did you do that because you had to recast the character and you want to kind of like mess with her face so you think people won't tell the difference?
Yeah,
like,
I mean, that could very well be it.
So Mother Superior is in her house. She lives at 666 something, which is cute. There's a fun scene of a bunch of kids running around, and there's a little like robot Santa in front of her house, and then Ricky's foot comes in and stomps it. And so he attacks Mother Superior in her house. He has his own Jack Nicholson from The Shining moment. He busts open a door with an axe, looks in, and just goes, "Ha ha! Oh, there you are!" Another one of my favorite lines. So he busts in, and they have a great fight, honestly, for a nun in a wheelchair. Some stuntman gets to dress up as Mother Superior and fall down some stairs. Great stair fall.
And boy, do they fall. Oh
yeah,
my God.
it's a great stunt.
Tumbling just like ass over tea kettle in a full fucking nun's habit. It's great. And it's moments like this that actually solidify that, you know, okay, this movie might be worth watching for the right person. And that gets more into a question about like who the right person is, because like the movie as it stands on its own, it's really not much of a movie.
Well, the parts that are a movie are really, really good. Like, because that's the thing. There's a movie hidden in this editing experiment.
Yeah.
Like that's the thing. If I would love, like, I have the Blu-ray, and a thing that I wish they had was just cut out the stuff from the first movie. And just give me because it's only about like 45, maybe 50 minutes of original material. And it's like, if I could just watch that, I'd honestly watch that, because if you've seen the first Silent Night, Deadly Night, you're going to want to fast forward through this, especially because it's a truncated, not as good version of that first movie. And you want to get to Eric Freeman. Like, he's just so good. I mean, in the end, when he's fighting Mother Superior and she's in her wheelchair, and she goes, "You are being very, very naughty." And he raises the axe above his head and just goes, "Naughty this," and brings it down. It's wonderful. And then we get a delightfully cheesy moment of the good nun and the detective busting into the house, and Mother Superior sitting at a table, and the nun's like, Mother Superior, are you all right?" Taps her shoulder, head falls off.
Yeah, that's super fun. It's a wholly unique experience as a movie, at least through our eyes, because we've never done a movie like this on the show before. It makes it really difficult to assess from a critical standpoint, because it doesn't ever feel like its own thing, and instead feels more like a supplement to the first film, but not even a substantial supplement, like a half-hearted supplement in a lot of ways. But even as a half-hearted supplement, it's still enjoyable enough to kind of recommend on some level.
Well, they certainly hit on a couple things. There is an element, I think, of cartoonery in the new footage that's not present. Like, the first film it has its fun elements, like, oh look, Linnea Quigley got impaled on a big reindeer, head. It's like, yeah, that's fun. But the first movie's dark. Like, it's a dark movie. And it's trying to be tonally. The new footage in this, I have to believe a lot of it knows that it's going for laughs, both laughs in comedy and laughs in enjoyment. Because you can't come up with something like the umbrella death, or have your actress go, "Uh-oh," and not know you're making something goofy.
No, it takes actually a fairly good sense of humor to come up with moments like that.
Yeah.
The effort there is certainly appreciated.
Well, and between that, if that was just there, it'd be like, yeah, there's some fun stuff in that movie. but the magic of not only getting Eric Freeman, but apparently mishandling directing him in such a grandiose way that the performance you got out of him is unlike anything you will ever see. I mean, people talk about that with certain bad movie performances like Tommy Wiseau in The Room or most of the actors in Troll 2, you know, but the way that those people and those actors are doing something that's unconventional and bizarre and hilarious, Eric Freeman's doing something else. It's his own unique bizarreness. And it's, if you've only ever seen Garbage Day, understand like that's him through the movie. I actually want to say his performance is good. Like, because it's not only the most memorable thing of the movie, it's the thing that I'm the most excited about when I remember this movie and when I revisit this movie, which has honestly become something of a Christmas tradition for me. It's like, I want to see Eric Freeman's eyebrows do that. Like, I want to hear his very particular line deliveries. Like, they're wonderful and they're memorable. And
there's no question that he is what makes the film worth watching. That's it.
I mean, yeah, I mean, not just that. I really think that the stuff that's in here, there is stuff that you will absolutely always take with you, especially in the subgenre of Christmas horror. It certainly brought smiles to our faces, and it's unlike anything you'll ever see before. And on that note, like, I feel like it bears a recommendation. It is really something that you have to see to believe. I think on that note, we can head over to the shelf where we pick some movies that act as good pairings or supplements or substitutions to our our main topic. And we encourage you to go, I'm talking to you, listener, to go to GenreVision.com and comment on the post for this episode with your own shelf pick, because the shelf is this collaborative thing that we've been building here at the GenreVision Movie Club. It's a huge dreamland video store of recommendations that you want people to check out, and we can't build it without you. So if you do leave a shelf pick on the post for this episode, we will feature it on the next episode of GenreVision. So Travis, what are you going to pull off the shelf for Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2?
If you want to watch a movie kind of like the original Silent Night, Deadly Night, where a guy goes crazy and thinks he's Santa Claus, you really can't do any better than Christmas Evil.
Yes.
This has become a growing cult movie. Like the fan force behind this movie has been mounting and growing. And even people like John Waters have really sung its praises, and for good reason. Like, I watched this at Christmas time last year and it's still stuck with me. It is, I think, one of the more striking Christmas horror movies like ever made, because eventually it gets to a point where it's a full-on black comedy. Like there's definitely kind of like a pacing doldrums with the movie where it feels a little slow. But once our lead character in the film starts to fully believe he's Santa and it's Christmas Eve and he starts going around and doing Santa stuff, the movie is riveting. And it has one of the best endings of any Christmas movie ever made.
Yes.
It is fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, I echo all of that. I know this movie may not exist in any watchable form if it wasn't for John Waters. He really was somebody who helped discover it and get the word out about it. And he's absolutely its biggest proponent, to the point where he did a commentary with the director on the DVD release, which I would die to hear.
That's awesome.
Yes. And as John Waters says, it has one of the greatest, most uplifting endings of any Christmas movie you'll ever see. Like, it really is something truly magical. And I think it's a good thematic exploration of certain ideas about Christmas. The way that the main character views Christmas and, keeps his own naughty and nice list about kids in the neighborhood. It's fascinating. Absolutely second that recommendation. Christmas Evil is one of my faves of the season, and I really hope the cult continues to grow, because I'm not a big fan of the first Silent Night, Deadly Night, and as that, I wish Christmas Evil was even more popular than it. It deserves it. And on that note, I will also offer up a Christmas horror movie that at this point I feel pretty confident saying it's its own brand of classic. This is Black Christmas from 1974. We did an episode where we did all 3 Black Christmas movies, so you can go listen to our extended thoughts. But just to reiterate, Black Christmas 1974 is an incredibly different movie than you might expect. Like, there's stuff going on in that movie that is pretty progressive and taboo at the time. To hear characters talk about certain things very openly. But most of all, when that movie wants to get creepy and scary, it may be the creepiest Christmas horror movie ever.
Oh, I don't think there's any question. Like, if you've seen the original Black Christmas and the scenes of the killer, who is kind of, I don't know, colloquially known as Billy, like when you see him go off on the phone, it's really chilling. And then the end of this movie, again, I think it's an ending that is just as like transcendent as Christmas Evil, but in a totally different way.
Oh yeah. I mean, if Christmas Evil is the uplifting magical moment, the ending of Black Christmas will just sink coal into your soul. Like, it's so fucking wow. Just, oh my God. It's so scary. Like, it's so creepy.
Also, my second favorite Keir Dullea performance ever.
That's true. Yeah, he's great in the movie. You know, Black Christmas gets a lot of monikers thrown on it. One of them being that it, you know, kicked off the slasher craze, and, you know, it predates Halloween, and that Halloween was a ripoff of it and all this stuff. And in all honesty, I think that in some ways Black Christmas and Halloween are wonderful cousin movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that there's a kindredness to them that I love that. Spoiler alert for the original Black Christmas, but we don't know who the killer is. We don't know
Billy
what the killer is.
Just an assumed like pseudonym that like fans called the killer. And
there's stuff. There's stuff in the movie.
Like, oh my God.
There's stuff in the movie that allows them to put that moniker on him. But whoever the killer is, this isn't a giallo. This isn't a mystery. It's just, this is some dark representation of Christmas, like terrorizing these poor sorority girls.
Yeah. We didn't even get a full face reveal for him. Whoever the fuck it is, like, oh my God.
But we get one of the greatest eye shots in all cinema.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, but yeah. So, I mean, honestly, Christmas Evil and Black Christmas, a really good double feature. You may want to leave Christmas Evil for the second one, because it'll leave you a little bit more, I don't know, maybe hopeful about humanity. But we will now head over to the listener shelf picks for last week's episode on the Chronicles of Narnia, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, and had quite a lot. I'm very happy that everybody came out for this one. Mr. Milksteak went with The Golden Compass and the 2007 version, Stardust, which also came out in 2007, and Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children. Stephen Nesbella had the Keanu Reeves Constantine, which we're boosters of, really like. Jetpack Jesus went with what you have to pair Chronicles of Narnia with, which is the Lazy Sunday SNL Lonely Island song. Cat Dad 5000 went with Bedknobs and Broomsticks, a Disney movie I've actually never seen. I had a friend that was really into Bedknobs and Broomsticks and always tried to get me to watch it. And I was like, nah, the cover looks boring.
I think I've probably seen bits and pieces of that movie on TV when I was a little kid and haven't seen or really thought of it in years.
No, Angela Lansbury's in it, and that's all I could tell you. Wald Trumpus went with actually a computer game called Simon the Sorcerer, which apparently had some fun kind of riffs or ripoffs of some Narnia stuff. Sir Flump also went with Stardust and the BBC radio play version of the Neil Gaiman story Neverwhere. JT went with Pirates of the Caribbean, The Curse of the Black Pearl. And Eric Fuchs had a quasi-anti-shelf pick, as he calls it, which is Pan from 2015. And an actual shelf pick, which is Escaflowne the movie. Dwight Egan Sora went with Spirited Away and Something Wicked This Way Comes, a little Disney gem that's not available on Disney+. And last but certainly not least, Eric Johnson went with Ender's Game. Thank you, everybody. So great to have, I love having all these shelf picks, and I'm very interested to see if we get a good helping of shelf picks for our last episode in 2021 with Silent Night, Deadly Night Part 2. Looking forward to seeing all those. Thank you, everybody, for submitting shelf picks, and we'll have more when we come back in the new year. Now, just some quick calls to action, but stick around because Travis and I are going to be talking about one of the weirdest, creepiest television shows that's currently available to watch. Apparently, Spotify now allows you to rate podcasts. So, hey, if you want to drop us a rating on Spotify, if that's how you listen to podcasts, we would love that.
Yeah, specifically, we're talking about star ratings on Spotify. So if you want to give us a rating from anywhere from 1 to 5 stars, like, go ahead and do that. Obviously, the more stars, the better. But, be honest, right? We're honest here on the show. We expect the same of you.
Absolutely. But even more so, if you love what we do here and you listen to us through whatever podcasting service you do, and you would like to leave us a rating and a review, you can do that at the Apple Podcast Store, because that is the stuff that really helps us climb the podcast charts. Honestly, in the past, when we've gotten reviews, we have metrics and analytics and stuff that tell us where we are in certain categories. And when we get reviews, we get significant jumps in those rankings.
Right, which means the show only becomes more discoverable, which means more people find it. And that's good for us and good for you.
Helps us get bigger and better. And we certainly want to do that in the new year. So if you leave a rating and review on the Apple Podcast Store, we will feature it here on the show. And if you want more GenreVision in your life, you can go to patreon.com/GenreVision and become a premium subscriber for just $5 a month. That will get you access to hours upon hours upon hours of bonus material, including weekly pre-shows. The one we did this week is actually scheduling out our January schedule. And I'm telling you, if there was ever a time to sign on to the pre-show, it's this week, because it is very possible that Travis had the biggest, longest, greatest laughing session in the history of this show on this week's pre-show.
I laughed until I was in pain and actually had to beg Drew to stop saying something.
Yes.
Because I found it so funny. So if you want to hear all that kind of stuff, you can go to patreon.com/GenreVision and subscribe there for $5 a month at the premium subscriber tier.
Well, let's close out the year with some currently consuming.
Nom, 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 nom.
And this is something Travis has already consumed, but I'm in the middle of consuming, and that he has been trying to get me to watch for a long time, and I finally took the plunge.
Shout out to listener Voldrumpus who said, please talk about more Shyamalan stuff.
Yeah, so here's some more for you. I started watching Servant on Apple TV after last week's episode, where I had one of the biggest laughing fits talking about Old. I was like, everything I say about Shyamalan, I need to check this out. And I started by watching Servant, and it's got me hooked. This is a really unique show.
Mm-hmm.
I will say Shyamalan, I think, has only directed 2 episodes so far, and those are both in the first season. I've just started season 2, and the season 3 is actually going to be starting next month. This is a really, really unique show, to the point where I'm surprised it's been able to go as long as it has, because it's weird.
Yeah. Well, Apple TV has this kind of like very huggy persona, or if you look at the Apple TV Plus, it's like, when they first started programming, it was like 2 Oprah shows and a couple of nature shows narrated by Paul Rudd and Tom Hiddleston. It was very huggy, very nice, very kind of bland, very like, oh, I'm sitting in a doctor's office and this is what they're playing on TV. It was it was a replacement for HGTV kind of. And then Servant came along and was like, we're going to fuck your whole scene up.
Well, I mean, there's certainly been other stuff on the platform now that's challenged that. But yes, I would say whenever I open it up, there's a picture of, I think it's Rose Byrne, and she's got a remote that she's pointing, and I'm like, man, and she's just in a comfy, little sweater and everything. I'm like, this is what I think.
That's from the show Physical, which is also another really dark and nasty show.
Yeah, well, but Ted Lasso has been a big breakout for them. So there is this perception of Apple TV being kind of it's for 40-year-olds, moms. That's kind of the impression that banner and that kind of stuff gives me, only to find out that there's actually some really interesting, weird, dark stuff on the platform, and Servant being probably the best from what I've heard.
It's the weirdest and nastiest. I mean, if you want to judge it by those metrics, it would be the best in terms of weird and nasty. This show really goes for the gut and in a very Shyamalan way. The other main creative force in the show is this guy named Tony Bascalop, who's this British writer, and the show has a distinctly kind of British voice. Yeah.
Well, he's we should say, while Shyamalan's a producer and has directed some episodes, Tony Bascalop is the creator and writes, I think, the majority, if not maybe all of the episodes.
Correct.
And the basic story, without giving too much away, because I went in pretty much totally blind. All I knew was from some ads that I'd seen, there's somebody with a fake baby doll that they seem to be treating as real. And that was it. That was all I really kind of knew. And that is certainly the kickoff to the first episode. but why this particular couple are treating this baby as real slowly gets revealed. They bring in this very young, I think she's 18.
Something like that, yeah.
This girl from rural Wisconsin called Leanne, who's very quiet, very meek, and she's come and she's going to take care of this fake baby, and she seems totally okay with that, which is odd. And then the show starts to get into like, well, who is this person? Why is she going along with this so easily? And then by the end of the first episode, something happens with the baby.
Mm-hmm.
That was I'm like, this is the hook, and I am hooked. This is interesting. This is odd. This is off-putting.
Also, the direction on that first episode is tits, dude. It's so good.
Yeah. I mean, the 2 episodes that Shyamalan's directed are phenomenal. Like, even when we were talking about Old and dying of laughter with all the terrible elements of it, we gave Shyamalan his due as a filmmaker, and that's on display here. In the episodes of Servant he did. There's some episodes throughout season 1. It's like, okay, this is more kind of like typical modern prestige, clean, filmmaking. But there's some other interesting stuff going on there too, as the show goes on. And certainly season 2, the first episode was like, okay, they got was it Julia Ducournau?
Yeah, Julie Ducournau, who directed Raw and most recently Titan, which won the Palme d'Or.
Yes, she directs, I don't know if she directs any more episodes, but she directed the first episode of season 2, and it was like, okay, yeah, there's something else going on here, filmmaking wise. And the story is very bizarre, very off-putting, and in the best of ways in bad taste, in a lot of scenes. There's good performances, but odd performances. It's a weird show. And it's a weird show that even by the end of the first season is very clearly playing a lot of its cards close to its chest. I'm hoping now that I've started season 2, there are certain things that it's like, yeah, I think certain plot lines, they drag their feet on a little too much in the first season. But there's still a good pacing. What I also like, which why aren't more shows doing this? The episodes are only about like 25 to 30 minutes each.
Mwah.
Yeah, which makes it a much more, for me, an easier to binge show. Like I usually sit and watch about 3 episodes in a sitting, and there's only 10 episodes in a season. It's like, yeah, these don't feel overly long. Like I feel like so many Netflix shows do that, where it's like, well, they have to be 44 minutes because that's what our algorithm says people will, watch or something like that.
Sure.
And instead this feels like, no, they feel about the length they're supposed to be. Now I said to you, I was like, this probably could have been like 6 episodes of 45-minute like shows than 10 episodes of 30 minutes. But that's a small nitpick in my book. It's like, yeah, it's just different structuring stuff you could do. I'm into it. I'm really into it. And from what I've heard, season 2 gets a little bit better with some of the issues that I had with season 1. I've not seen anything upcoming from season 3, so I don't know where things are going yet. But
I've seen the teasers, and honestly, I'm excited. I really
Great.
liked seasons 1 and seasons 1 and 2, and this is an easy show to sleep on because it's on a service that not many people are subscribed to. But if you can, if you can find some way to get access to Apple TV Plus, check Servant out. Especially if you're like looking to get into more of this like borderline, like constantly tasteless stuff that Shyamalan is like so good at doing right now. You got to get on it.
It's an amazing cognitive dissonance of prestige and exploitation.
Yes.
Which is incredible. Like it's hard. I can't believe that balance is going on. And I'll say one of the reasons that I'm happy to be watching Servant is that it just recently got renewed for season 4, and it was announced that will be its final season. I'm very like touchy about a lot of shows today because I'm like, I don't know if someone's going to get canceled, or I don't know if they have a game plan in mind. So many shows don't get a final season. They just get canceled or something. And so I like knowing that the end is in sight, and that they know the end's in sight, and that they can write for it.
Yeah.
That's another reason I'm like, yeah, I'm glad I jumped on this train when I did, because now I know that there's an ending coming and that they're ready for it. So yeah, it took me probably way too long, but I finally jumped on the train, and I'm glad I did. So now Travis and I can talk about another weird Shyamalan thing as it's going on. But that is going to close out GenreVision for 2021. We'll We'll be doing our GV Awards, which we talked about next month at the end of January, which will be kind of our wrap up for 2021. We want to give ourselves some time to watch some movies that we may have missed or may not have been on our radar. And we'll be doing the first ever GV Awards, and we hope you'll all check that out. But next week, we will be off for the holiday break. The following week, we'll be coming back and we'll be doing an episode on The Matrix Resurrections, kicking off January, which will be New Year, New Movies Month. We're doing a whole bunch of movies that both Travis and I have never seen. So we hope you will join us. I really hope you'll join us for The Matrix Resurrections because we're big Matrix dorks, and I know we're going to have, whatever comes to the movie, we're going to have quite a bit to talk about with it, I'm sure. So everybody, if you've been listening to GenreVision throughout the year, throughout 2021, thank you so much for sticking with us. And we're so happy to have you as loyal listeners. It really does. It does our hearts good to know you're out there and that you want to be a part of this movie club that we've built. Thank you so much. And I can't properly say the words that really articulate how happy I am that we're all in this together and we're all having fun every week. So, as always, we want to thank you for listening. I'm Drew Deach.
I'm Travis Newton.
And we will see you in 2022.
Right here on GenreVision.